Hello everybody and welcome back to Google Developers Live. I'm Joanna Smith and I'm a Developer Programs Engineer for Google+. And today I have our fantastic intern Sam Stern, who wrote the documentation we published this morning at developers.google.com/plus/web/Facebook. And what we wrote here is an article on how to add Google+ to an existing Facebook integration. So Sam, why don't you tell us about your project?
Thanks, Joanna. So the idea with my project is that we have a lot of great resources on our developer site for how to get started with Google+ if it's your first identity provider. But where there was a gap was, what if Google+ is not your first identity provider? And specifically, what if you already have Facebook integrated into your website? How can you get started with Google+ and overcome the unique challenges that you run into when Google+ is your second or third identity provider?
So how did you, as an intern, gain this perspective and come to understand this point of view?
So the easiest way to pretend to be a Facebook developer with Facebook integrated into their app is to build an app with Facebook integration, which is what I spent my first few weeks here doing. And from there, I went to add Google+ on top, making note of what was easy, what was hard, or just what was different that might be interesting to a developer going through the same experience.
OK, so I guess the next logical question is, what did you learn? What was different? What was easy? What was hard?
There are three main things you have to do. The first thing is you have to get started. You have to add the Google+ JavaScript to your web page. You got to get the sign-in button on your page, and some basic things that are a little bit different from the perspective of a Facebook developer. From there are a couple pain points that you're going to want to tackle, such as authentication on the server side and on the client side. And after that, it goes into translating features. If you're sharing on Facebook, how do you share on Google+? And beyond that, what can you do that's unique to Google+, and how can you really make the user experience better by adding Google?
So it sounds like there's a lot of content there, but let's break it down and let's talk about authentication. What did you learn about managing multiple identity providers across multiple platforms?
So the first thing I did with authentication, I tried to jump right in, and the code got messy. And what I learned quickly is you have to separate your concerns. You want to keep your Google+ code in one place, your Facebook code in another place. And the code that holds it all together is what you should really focus on. That's where you should manage your authorization. So in the article, I'll show an example of how you can do this with your client-side login on a page that has the Sign In with Google button and the Login with Facebook button. And we can go to the code now. I'll give an overview of the code here, but make sure to look at the article after the episode and take a deeper look. So what you can see here is something that in this case is called auth states, and it's a central place to manage your authorization. You can see on the screen the code for when the user clicks on the Login with Facebook button. What you would normally do is initiate the login process right in that block of code. But when you're dealing with multiple providers, it's easier to offload your authorization state to this glue code that we've written here and centralize your choice of login. So for instance, in this case, we want to let the user make a choice between Google and Facebook when they're signing in. But we also want to keep the flow going quickly. So the code here gives an example of what you do if the user is logged into Google and Facebook. In this case, we're going to go ahead and log the user in with Google. Of course, you can customize this to your preferences. But what you can really see here, and what the point is, that none of the authorization logic is mixed together. And you don't have any of these nasty if Google, else Facebook statements. You centralize it, and then you can go on to add 3, 4 identity providers and push all of the authentication to this one central location instead of creating messy code that's hard to maintain.
OK, and so when you were creating this central location, this kind of like glue that holds everything together, was there anything about it that was particularly difficult, or did you find that it started to make sense once you really had your mind around it?
So I think you'll see once you implement a framework like this that it all starts to make sense when you think of your providers as just ways a user can connect to your website. And don't try to let the providers handle each other's logic. If you centralize it, you'll see that you can take the flow you had in your mind and really implement it quickly in your application, and then you won't have to maintain the same separate pieces of code over and over. You can do it all in one place.
Social identity providers have a lot more than just authentication, right? And I guess my next question is, how do some of these features that are really similar between Facebook and Google+, how did you handle that?
So in the feature translation section of the article, you'll see a breakdown of, if you're doing something with Facebook, how you can do the same thing or a similar thing on Google+ to keep a consistent experience for users. One particular example is if you're used to publishing information on the Open Graph on Facebook, you should be publishing app activities to Google, which is Google's way of sharing structured data from your application about actions the user has taken. The user has listened to a song or rented a room. Things like that that you might have been pushing to the Open Graph, you should push to app activities on Google.
Okay, and then how did you handle the user experience across multiple different feature sets? Did you have custom UIs? Did you surface certain buttons at certain times? How did you really handle that?
So what the developer really should focus on is making your app shine, but also highlighting the identity provider that your user chose. So you want to present the correct set of features at any given time based on how the user is signed into your application without creating a fragmented user experience. For instance, if the user is on a page that is shareable on Facebook, you might want to have Facebook's share button, whereas with Google, you might want to have an interactive post. And this is something that you can also discover in the feature translation section about how to give a consistent user experience without missing what makes each network, each social identity provider different, or why the user chose to sign in with the provider that they did.
Okay, and on that note, what are some things that are different about Google Plus that you think Facebook developers might be interested in?
So there were three main things that I was able to add to my application after I added Sign with Google that I couldn't get before. The first of them is over-the-air installs, which is something really powerful that if you have a user sign in on the web, you can offer them the opportunity to sign in to install your Android application to their device at the same time. When your user signs into your service once, they're signed in on all their devices, and this is a way to create a really great user experience and get your users to where they actually want to be going in your application. And the third one is interactive posts, which at first might seem like a share that a lot of other providers have, but interactive posts allow you to really call the user to an action on your application. And this also goes with deep linking, where you can bring the user directly to what they want to do on your app or on your website, rather than just sharing content, which is more powerful and allows the user to act more quickly.
Fantastic. So let's go back to this article that you wrote, right? Like it seems to be pretty long. There's a lot in there. What can developers expect to learn from this article? What resources are available to them there?
So like you said, there's a lot of content in this article, and hopefully what a developer can see is that this is a very customizable framework for managing multiple providers in your application. There's a lot of code here that will work for you, but it doesn't have to be set in stone. You can expand what's in the article to fit the needs of your application, and hopefully you can go from 0 to hero with Google Plus very quickly and start from having just Facebook on your website to have a fully functioning Google Plus integration by the end of the article.
So before we sign off, I want to put you on the spot, and I want to know what your favorite part about interning with us here in Mountain View was, as well as your least favorite part.
So favorite part is easy. I sit about 5 feet from a foosball table, and I got pretty good at foosball playing with everybody. And I'm going to cheat and have two favorite parts. I also really like the food, which I think everybody who comes to Mountain View says. And my least favorite part, coming from the East Coast, would be the tech bubble of the Silicon Valley. It's hard to go anywhere within 50 miles without hearing about the latest app or website, which, sometimes it could be a little much.
That's a very true statement. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Sam. We really appreciated you taking the time to do this episode before you go back to school. And once again, everyone watching at home, if you'd like to see the full scope of what Sam did this summer, you can go to developers.google.com/plus/web/Facebook. And of course, all of our documentation is there as well. And you can learn everything you wanted to know about the Google Plus platform or how to get started if you're a Facebook developer primarily. And then, of course, if you have questions about this, ask them to us. We'll answer on Stack Overflow. If you use the tag Google-Plus, we'll be able to find it. And then if you'd like to see some code of how our samples work or how to sign in or how the button works, check out our GitHub repository at github.com/Google+. And then if you find a bug or if you have a feature request, let us know in our issue tracker. And all of these resources are available in our documentation at developers.google.com/plus. So thank you for joining, and I hope you all have a wonderful week.